Welcome to Block and Build, a podcast from Convergence Magazine. I'm your host and the publisher of Convergence, Caden Mock. On this show, we're building a roadmap for the movement that's working to block the impacts of rising authoritarianism while building the strength and resilience of the broad front that we need to win. This week on the show, I'll be talking with outgoing president of the United Teachers of Los Angeles, Cecily Myart-Cruz. During Cecily's tenure, she guided UTLA through attacks from the right, complications in the early COVID-19 pandemic, threats towards immigrant students, and the second Trump administration. I'll talk with Cecily about her journey with UTLA, reflecting on her victories and challenges, as well as what lies ahead for both the union and American public education at large. But first, these headlines. On Tuesday, Wisconsin's Democratic Socialist candidate for governor, Francesca Hong, lost her primary race to David Crowley. Although she only lost by a little over 3,000 votes in a race that turned out around 700,000 Democratic voters, mainstream media would like you to believe that this is a major blowout and kill shot to the momentum more progressive and Democratic Socialist candidates have gained in this year's primary elections. Opinion articles and think pieces flowed in the days following about the limits of these platforms' viability in electoral politics. But the reality is, a candidate as outspokenly progressive as Hong, coming within less than a point of winning that particular primary, is actually noteworthy. The impossibility of progressive electoral wins in Midwestern states is a favorite topic of the chattering pundit class. And they will continue to parse all sorts of details about where her campaign came up short or why the polls were off. But the macro level view is that, despite a disappointing but narrow loss, this is the start of something bigger. It is the sign that the Midwest is in fact fertile ground for movement building over time. Hong's candidacy is not the end of a movement, it's our first step in Wisconsin and beyond. Last week, the extent of the Department of Homeland Security's surveillance of unions and movement organizations in Minnesota became public. The release of documents includes this new set that were part of a grand jury proceeding that led to the indictments of 15 protesters a couple months ago. It was also part of a motion to reveal more information about that case against those protesters, and they are revealing indeed. The records show a far-reaching investigation, including subpoenas of financial transfers going back up to 3 years and undercover agents participating in demonstrations. Records requests targeted unions like SEIU and CWA, as well as national organizations, including Sunrise Movement, and local Minnesota organizations like Voices for Racial Justice. The activities being investigated were entirely protected by the First Amendment. The Department of Justice has been trying to build the case under the auspices of NPSM 7, which is a 2025 Trump directive, which asserts, among other absurd things, that anyone who participates in things like ICE Watch or anti-ICE protests are members of some kind of huge, violent, anti-American left-wing conspiracy worthy of prosecution. It's pretty clear that no matter what our organizations do, we are opening ourselves up to scrutiny at this point. Operating out of fear does the government's work for them, though. And at the same time, it is our responsibility to make sure that we're responsible, doing our record keeping, and being really clear about the risks and the opportunities of the crucial movement building work that any of our organizations are engaged in. The last thing I'll say is this. The New York Times piece on the document drop explicitly name-checks COINTELPRO. We've got a piece coming out soon from someone who survived COINTELPRO in the 70s, but not without taking his hits, including doing some hard prison time. You're going to want to read it when it comes out because in light of this development, the things that he's learned about building stronger movements could not be more relevant. His warning is that approaching our work with the intention to build trust and move with humility makes us a lot harder to infiltrate and fracture. And now is a great time to sign up for our email newsletter so you don't miss it.
Hey everybody, this is Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party. I read and give to Convergence because it has become a home for me to engage in critical analysis, find practical advice for organizing and strategy, and inspiration in the belief that a better world is not only possible, we can build it.
To make either a one-time donation or become a sustaining member, visit convergencemag.com/donate. You can find a direct link in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
Leading a union is hard work. What's even more hard? Leading the union for educators in the second largest school district in the United States, United Teachers of Los Angeles, through the earliest months of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, I talked to the woman who did just that, the immediate past president of UTLA, Cecily Myart-Cruz. She was also the first woman of color to be elected to that position. During her tenure, she made strides in racial justice and protections for immigrants, both workers and students in the district. She helped secure more financial protections for the district, its workers, and more. And under her leadership, UTLA was able to expand what is possible through organizing that includes the community, not just its members. But now, public schools across the country are under attack from the right, including the Trump administration's plans to dismantle the Department of Education. As she steps away from the position, she talks to us about her tenure from the start of the COVID-19 pandemic to her transition to a new role as a member of the National Education Association's Executive Committee, and to talk about the threats currently facing public education, a foundational piece of our democracy, everywhere. Cecily, thank you so much for making the time to chat today.
Absolutely.
And you just finished up your tenure as the president of United Teachers Los Angeles, right?
Yes, I did. So I'm the immediate past president.
Well, congratulations. I mean, it feels like your tenure is marked by some really, really major shifts in education and our political life because it started just a few months into the COVID pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about that disruption and how it sort of set the stage for a lot of the things that you lived through, that you led through, and that you witnessed as the president of UTLA?
Yeah, I mean, coming in July 1 of 2020, I won the election in February.
Mm-hmm.
So the world was quite different. It was literally February 27th of 2020. So it was you're thinking about, what could be, so forth. And then March 13th comes and you're like, okay, I think we're only going to be out. I remember telling my son, I think we're only going to be out like a couple of weeks. And, and then we'll be back. And then we weren't back. And at that time, I was still, I was the vice president and, trying to think and plan and so forth. But then also holy Toledo, I'm going to start my presidency in this COVID drama. And I think in the beginning, what I saw from everyone, well, one is, absolute disbelief, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? I felt like in the beginning, there was it was a big surge of folks coming together, trying to figure it out. All credit due to the educators of Los Angeles and really the educators in the nation for coming up with everything that they were doing on the fly. We did not even have any clue as to Zoom. No one taught us how to do that. No, we didn't have those type of things. We didn't have that. It was crazy, right? And shoot, here we are, our folks learned how to do all of these things just on the fly. And really just all praises to the educators who really just found their way. Early ed educators trying to make sure that early ed babies were focused, were on the camera, they made it fun, that people had green screens. They had all kinds of stuff that you just wouldn't even imagine. I obviously in a studio and so forth and so on, but folks were just doing things. And that was so powerful. And then there was the shift. And it was y'all need to get back to work. It was kind of like the back to brunch folks were we need to get back to our brunches and y'all need to get back into these classrooms because what we cannot do is I'm not going to be doing this. And it was wait. We didn't even know what this was called, what it was. We did not even know. Can you imagine trying to work with babies? As a parent, trying to work with your own kid, you're setting them up. I would typically set my kid up on his Zoom. One, you're cooking breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and you're doing your work. You're going over here. It was crazy. I know that there were several times where my kid was doing a read aloud and he was like, Mom, you were talking and you cursed and everyone heard.
Oh my
He's like,
God.
you need to take your Zoom into the car. And I was like, dang, put on blast. But I will, that back to brunch folks, and that's just what I'm calling it, they just were incessant about getting back to school. It didn't matter. It was for their own convenience. Let me we don't care what's going on. Just go over there. And it was like, but we couldn't. Like we didn't know. And I'm going to say like, I have lots of critics that say a lot of things about me. But I will say that I am thankful that I worked with our superintendent at the time, Austin Butner, that him and I had that philosophy. I mean, I had never met this man before. We did all of our communications like this on Zoom, on the phone. And, he was right there with me around, we don't know what this is. We don't want to bring students back into a place that in LA, our kids are living in multi-generational homes.
Right.
And that was the key, because let's say if those babies came back and then had COVID and brought it back, then everybody in the house, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
For us and for me, I respect that, and I am happy that we did what we did to ensure safety for our babies, the community, and our educators. Like, I'm never going to apologize for that, because it was what was necessary, despite all of the noise and all of that and the ire and everything else. We did what was right for what we knew. And what I saw in Chicago and Texas and Boston, Miami, like all these other places, New York, people were going in and like bobbing and weaving back, right? Like going into the buildings, people get sick, go out, so forth and so on. And we didn't sustain those type of losses of members, because I believe that we did everything that we could do given the circumstances in which we were in.
I mean, what a wild ride. My partner and I had not met at the beginning of COVID, but she was in the classroom at an elementary school in Berkeley, California, during the start of COVID. And I remember like when we met and started talking about that time, just like, I can't imagine having to manage a class, like a bilingual classroom also remotely. It's just like wild. And how, like, when I do think about that time, that first year of the pandemic, like how little we all knew, because how little information there just was. And that like, I also can think about like that sort of break point where suddenly quote unquote essential workers, teachers, nurses, whoever, went from being the heroes to being the villains. And that was like overnight, like a really concrete narrative shift out there in the environment that also allowed, I think, the far right in a lot of ways, and like right-wing media, to weaponize that conflict to undermine things like funding healthcare, funding hospitals, funding schools. So could you talk a little bit about the way that you saw that wedge being weaponized against your members, against the school district, against public education more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, you describe it perfectly. It is a wedge. It is literally a wedge, and that wedge permeates to even things now, right? And it's really indicative of, let's just take one specter of that, health and safety. We have a Kennedy that's over health and safety, right? In a time where we've had massive measles. I'm 52 years old, so like, we got the MMR shots when we were little, right? And like, you didn't hear about that. We've had a whole measles outbreak where there's been deaths. You have now the lettuce thing going on right now. All of these things have to do with health and safety. And it is really to drive down what is good for our communities. And in education, that is absolutely saying that we should have got back to school earlier is equating to that's why they shouldn't have funding. That's why teachers should not be paid, so forth and so on. That kind of rhetoric is very pervasive and it's really dangerous in thinking because what COVID actually and the pandemic actually did was expose the lack of infrastructure that we really have. It was an exposure, right? It wasn't a band-aid. It was like ripped off. It's like the underpinnings of the whole house were completely in disarray. And this was the actual moment. If we would have all just came together, this was the actual moment to see something different.
That's right. And it felt like there was a moment that we could have. Right?
Absolutely. And that moment went to the wayside because you had people, the back to brunch people, right? Like the teachers are not doing anything. The educators are not doing anything. They're just playing on this computer. Then you have now a whole rise of AI. You have the whole data center thing, right? So like all of these things are underpinnings of what actually happened and where we were exposed as a nation of not really doing what was necessary. So in a school system like Los Angeles Unified School District, that is the most marginalized communities, Black and brown communities, intergenerational communities that could have been literally like a lot could have been wiped out if we had just gotten back to, what folks were actually saying, right? That to me, it just signifies and solidifies what the narrative on the other side is, right? We know that we've suffered. Well, here in LA, we have had decades of disinvestment, decades of disinvestment in public education, nationwide, decades, centuries. It was founded on not giving people the right to read and write, right? Like this is what it was. And the dumbing down of the curricula, right? The nonsensical use of, a free and fair public education for some, not all. Full stop. And so now here we are where we could have seen something born anew. We could have ended all of the testing regime. The standardized testing regime is what I'm talking about. We could have ended all that, but no. How will the billionaires, millionaires make their money? Because they make it on the backs of Black and brown communities.
Well, and I think, especially thinking about even just like the way in which facilities needed to be updated for safety, right? That like, I think the thing that you're describing, this like real sort of like revealing of how deteriorated everything is, I think was really clarified for a lot of people in that moment. The like need to make these spaces safer when people had to come back to the classroom revealed just how like messed up those spaces were in the first place. And it's like, why are we putting up with this? Right? Like,
correct.
It is not complicated.
One of the other things is that, it revealed, educators are actually putting thousands of dollars into their classroom.
Right. Spending their own money from their tiny paychecks.
Correct. And we've done it without question, happily every single time, because you knew that your school didn't have enough. So what did you do? You took your meager paycheck and bought a whole bunch of supplies, because folks are creative out there. They want to make sure that their little crayon caddy the little, pencil holders that they all are nice. They're all matching. Everybody has a name tag. We ready. We got this and that. We make sure, you don't have to use that borax hard soap, right? Folks go and get Dial and Bath and Body Works soap for their classroom. They have a air plug-in so that they it can smell nice in there. They make sure to have a broom. They got a Swiffer mop, power mop. Like, folks have the things because they already know that the schools don't have that much money. And you got to make sure. How many people are going and standing online at Staples when they're doing their back to school events where they can get pencils, pack of 10 pencils for, 10 cents. Like, that is a real thing. They're going to buy, 30 boxes of crayons and things like that to have enough to make sure that they have for not only the first semester, but heck, second semester, because one box of crayons is not enough. Who's footing the bill? Oh, we are. And you still won't pay us what we worth.
Well, let's talk specifically about the fight to make sure that teachers are compensated fairly. I know that a lot of our listeners probably know about the 2019 strike, which you were a vice president in that time. You all went on strike for 3 days in 2023 and then narrowly avoided a strike earlier this year during your bargaining period. And knowing from experience, like growing up in a public teacher union family, having a partner who's a public school teacher and has worked in public schools, like that, those moments of crisis, of disruption really like create some like opportunities and also risks for teachers who are fighting for their rights to be paid well and fighting to make their classrooms like safe, pleasant places for kids to learn. Could you talk a little bit about the organizing that went into those bargaining cycles and also a little how UTLA has been able to navigate those contradictions and bring the community in to support the union and the teachers?
Yes. So 2019 strike, I think, was catapulted us in a lot of ways and catapulted other unions, right? Because when we went out in January of 2019, Oakland went out in February of 2019, right? And so it was like boom, boom. But where did this come from? And I'm going to say that it comes from West Virginia. It comes from Oklahoma. It comes from Arizona. It comes from red states that don't have collective bargaining, that we're dealing with, our working conditions, our students' learning conditions. It's hot in these classrooms. We don't have enough custodians. We don't have enough education support professionals, so forth and so on. And we're tired. And enough is enough. Basta ya, and that Red for Ed movement really spurned us on to be like, yo, even when you have places that are deep red, have zero collective bargaining, in some places, rural places, we still have the same issues and concerns that folks in urban settings, suburban settings, we all try to make sure that our babies have everything they need. And when it doesn't happen, we come to this moment that we have to say, enough is enough, and we have to do. And so we looked at that, right? We looked at St. Paul. We looked at Chicago to, what Karen Lewis, and her birthday was a couple of days ago, like just really like setting a tone to like, we don't have to, why are we always begging? Why are we begging for crumbs and scraps? We do that. We shouldn't. Like, every profession is born out of an educator being in front of you. But we treat our educators, our education support professionals so bad. We just are not, we undervalue, we don't pay them what they're worth. So taking that and then using that as the catalyst to all of the things that we've been able to do, um, uh, in 2023, it helped us have a coalition with SEIU Local 99 that was never there before. In 2019, like, we spoke to them and stuff, but in 2023, things needed to change, right? From 2019 to 2023, a lot of stuff. The pandemic happened, right? All of these things. We had we had at that height, you had everybody now was talking about racial and social justice, but not really, right? Like, on the surface, fake.
Yeah.
We had the largest uprising after, George Floyd was murdered, because you were at home. You could see it. Like, Black folks see it every day, but everybody watching, like, whoa, what's going on? Having that huge uprising and people filling the streets. I remember looking at the news, and they were showing, like, in Reykjavik, Iceland, they had a Black Lives Matter march. And I was like, there's no Black people there. And they had a march. You knew that it was worldwide. And so the far right was like, oh no.
We can't have that. Yeah.
Can I have this? Because in my mind, like, people always want to throw out, oh, we're fighting for a multiracial, multi-ethnic, blah, blah, blah. But what does that really mean? You take the underpinnings of what Chairman Fred Hampton said, right? Because he talked about a real multi-ethnic, multiracial, and he brought all of these folks together. And that's why he had to be assassinated, right? Because he was bringing everybody together, and everybody is like, we're feeling the same thing. That's what I'm looking at when we look at all of this stuff. So then come to 23, where we are like lockstep with SEIU. Now, we didn't agree with them on a lot of things, and they definitely didn't agree with us on a lot of things. But one thing that we had in common is like, look, we know education support professionals are the lowest paid, the Black and brown women, lowest paid professions. Our cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, right? These are the people that see our babies early in the morning and late at night, and everything in between, feeding them and so forth. And what do you mean? Like, these are the people we work side by side, our special ed assistants. These are our family. What are you talking about that we can't work together? Of course we can. And I remember when Executive Director Max Arias from Local 99 was like, the district's not giving us what we want. We're going to go out on strike. And he was like, sister, will you join us? And like, without even thinking, I was like, yeah. And I was like, wait. I got to go back to my members. Like, hold that thought. Let me go back to my members. And I remember talking about it in our board. And I had a couple, board members, like, they weren't on the line with us in 2019. And I was like, stop. Let's forget 2019. We're right here in 2023. Or the ending of 2022, like, we're in this moment. These are our family members. They're asking for us to show up for them. I'm not putting prerequisites on it, like a course curriculum. I'm saying right here, right now, do we believe that they should be paid? Right here, right now, do we believe that their life should be valued? Their work should be valued. Your work should be valued. Your life should be valued. Like, all of those things, those intersect, those come together. Can we do this? And the board said, yeah, we can. And what I witnessed was so beautiful at our work sites, where you had our teachers working side by side of our education support professionals hosting trainings together of what it's going to look like when we get on the line if we have to go. And it was just such a beautiful piece, that organizing, like going to each school site, having those interconnected conversations, because they have different hours. So a lot of our educators moved their meetings instead of having them at lunch, because you know you got your aides, they're working the outside. So now when folks are off work and we're done and we want to go home, we're staying after to have these critical meetings. And like just the love in the room. I remember going after school to one of the meetings, and literally they had every single person at that school site in that meeting. I mean, it was like Katie barred the door. Like there were no seats. We had food and drinks. And just the camaraderie that I saw just at this one site filled me with hope. It filled me with hope because there were like 80 people in the space, tiny space, 80 folks eating, drinking, giving, like when we do our picket signs, if it rains, this is how you're going to make sure that your sign lasts. You got to put some plastic over it. Like just critical things that folks wouldn't know, but we knew because we did it in 2019. And so those conversations of cross community, right? And then the conversations that we had with our parents and our students was just phenomenal. And it really, like 2019, you know, we had started conversations. 2023, they were crystallized, fully formed. And then it brings us to like right now, us averting a strike. Like, can you imagine? Like, we averted a strike with 3 unions, 3 of the biggest unions in our district. So the educators, the education support professionals, and the doggone principals. I mean, what? Like unheard of.
Yeah.
And so that kind of building together where we're like, an injury to one is an injury to all. Like those real life conversations, that's exactly what was needed. And those conversations have to continue, right? It's like, you know, if you don't work that muscle, it will atrophy.
Right. Totally.
And so that's what it was. And in 2019, I think, you know, because the pandemic and stuff, we got a little atrophy there. Got a little atrophy. And then when it got time for 2022, 23, it was like, okay, we're building this muscle back up. We're getting it going. We're getting it going. And we saw that. And now it's like sustained. Like people are like, what's next? What are we doing next?
That's awesome.
And I would say like in 2019, we had 16 bargainers. In 2023, we had 85.
Wow.
In 2025, 26, we had 150.
Wow.
When we hit the table in 9 to 10 months, I know it's going to be over 200 because folks are just wanting to participate, wanting to give up their time, wanting to see what is the district coming, like, what are they coming with, you know? And so that has been really the beautiful struggle that I see folks really coming to the table prepared.
Yeah. Well, I'm also curious over this course of time, how the like larger political landscape of Los Angeles and maybe in the state of California, how that's shifted for you all too, knowing that like there are multiple unions who are actually making solidarity into a verb in a really serious way. And that like the parents and the students are also now like read in on stuff in a way where they can really see your victories as victories for them and their families as well. Like, how has that changed the political landscape for you all?
Yeah, for us, one of the biggest things I think coming out of 2019, really like we were focused in 2020. So July when I came in, we were holding meetings with our group called CACS, California Alliance for Community Schools, and that's our statewide conversation with California Teachers Association. And Berkeley is a part of it, even though they're not CTA, they're CFT. Berkeley is a part of it. And we started meeting. We had always met, but now we were meeting on Zoom, and we met weekly because we were like, okay, if you are bargaining something, especially a piece of safety, let us know so that we can do that. We bargain. We were sharing ideas and sharing conversation that was so necessary and so critical. And then that morphed into, if we can do this, what if we could align our contracts? And people were like, but, I'm on a 2-year cycle. I'm on a 3-year cycle. And it's like, okay, but what if we could all get on a 3-year cycle?
Yeah.
And what would it look like? And could you do it? And with the bargaining that you're doing now, could you actually get to that place? And I can successfully say we did. But it took several rounds for us to get there, right? And like I said, in 2019, January 2019, we went on strike. February 2019, Oakland went on strike.
Yep.
So we already saw 2 unions that could do it. In 2023, March, we went on strike with SEIU Local 99, and Oakland went on strike in May of 23, right? So here you go again, this alignment. So now it's like this fully fleshed idea that we could really be aligned. Let's do this work. And so with the California Alliance for Community Schools, we were like, let's really make it for real. We want to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing and that we won't settle unless we get these 4 pillars, talking about stable, supportive schools, right? Making sure that we're looking at retention of educators, making sure that we're talking about a livable, thrivable wage, right? Because we want it to be livable and thrivable. And so like looking at those things, could that be the basis of alignment? And we did. And what it showed us, we had 7 strikes happened in the state of California this year. So if folks don't know, right, it kicked off with Richmond, United Teachers of Richmond said, we're not doing this. We are going to take it to a strike. You had after Richmond, I'm trying to think in the order, but Richmond started it off. And then I think it was San Francisco. They went, and in between there, you had Dublin going out, you had Natomas going out, you had True, which is Twin Rivers. So all of them in the Sacramento area, they all went out, right? As like, we're doing this. And Twin Rivers, they were out for like 10 days.
Yeah, I remember their strike was really
like
long.
10 days because their superintendent and board was just like messing with them, really messing with them. And they're small, but boy, were they mighty, right? And, having all 3 of those in the same general area going out at the same time, Lord have mercy. But it worked. And what we saw, because we sent staff, we sent members, like we as officers, we went to support because we wanted to show that solidarity is a verb, right? And it means like exactly what your sign says, direct action gets the goods, for sure. And that we were using the bargaining for the common good as our guide, our model in how we're approaching, right? How we approach our bargaining demands and what's going on with the community. What are they saying? And how do we bring those bargaining demands or what their community demands were and putting them in? What are the parents saying? How do we put that in? What are the students saying? And how do we put that in to the conversation? And that we're not going to leave anybody behind in that convo. And so we had all of these strikes. And the last strike, because we averted ours, the last strike was Little Lake. And a lot of people don't really know about it because it's in an unincorporated area of Downey. And I could be saying this wrong. So you might have a viewer that's like, that is wrong. And so I'm already saying it could be wrong. I know I live in LA. And, I've been over there and, okay, just charge it to my head, not my heart. Okay. And their strike was 12 days. They only had 150 members. Little Lake District only has 150 members. And one of our board of directors, her name is Mallory Evans. She's an audiologist for us. She lives down the street from one school, Lakeview. And she set up their picket tent, their picket line every day before she even went to work. Every single day she was out there with the bullhorn going because they didn't even know, okay, I'm supposed to like walk around. Like they didn't even know these things, right? And that's fine. And that's the solidarity, like coming out of your house and setting up a picket line, and the neighbors in those areas made sure that those educators had a place to use the restroom. Somebody had ordered a porta potty with the hand washing system, like they put it in their yard, like so that educators could, I saw families out there doing the carne asada. They were like,
that's amazing.
Lunchtime, take a break, and then you get back. But it was 12 days. And the president, Mary Pelos, she was adjacent to our We Can't Wait campaign with our cats. But she got so inspired about what could be possible that she took her 150 members out for a strike. And they were able to get back into the building. The superintendent resigned his little butt. Several of their school board members said they were done because they had to go to their house and were doing this direct action, and they could not handle it. But it was like, but you can handle taking healthcare away from folks. You can handle, in their kindergarten classes in Little Lake, they have 40 kids. What?
Unbelievable.
5-year-olds? You got 40 of them?
No, there's no way. There's no way.
There's no way.
Yeah, it's just not safe for anybody.
It's not safe, but also like 5-year-olds have an attention span of 5 minutes. So, no, you will not.
Yeah.
No, you will not. So they were asking for basic things.
Yeah.
And the basic things that they were asking for is like, you should do it. Give people smaller class sizes in kindergarten. Really? In elementary? Come on. Like, so those kinds of things were, where we were with the conversation. And so, like I said, that alignment, we are aligned again. That group is aligned again for 2028. Because, the clarion call that UAW Sean Fain threw down, it's like, where's this general strike coming from in 2028? We got the Olympics happening. Like, there's a lot, you might hear
it's going to be a heck of a year.
Has been, leading the LA 28 coalition. Like
Mhm.
it's coming. So we got to be prepared. And that is the reason why you have like the Mayday Strong
Mhm.
folks. You have, Indivisible doing their thing, right, with the No Kings marches and so forth. But like we've got to have this sustained buildup. We also have to have contract alignment. We also have to be fighting for the same things, right? Livable, thrivable wages to get us going to the next piece. And what we saw with students walked out, marched out. Some educators were, nervous, like, oh my God, But our union was out there on the front lines. Every time the students went out, with we had like wagons with water and stuff to like give students as they were protesting, because students should have the right, uh, to do it. And my son is in LA public schools, and he said, "Mom, we're gonna walk out today because he's a part of the student group LA Students Deserve. You can follow them on Instagram, LA_Students Deserve." And I was like, "Okay, just make sure to take care of yourself, so forth." And I was tracking his location and stuff, but it was good because you see the young people out there. And then after, that's the part where solidarity is a verb. After they marched, they could have gone to McDonald's or any place.
Sure.
They went for my son and all his folks. They went and joined the Kaiser picket line, because there's a Kaiser
Mhm.
down the street from their school. And those nurses were on strike, and the pharmacy techs were on strike. And so they joined them on the picket line. And so I was like, this is what we talk about solidarity being a verb,
Yeah.
right? So we are protesting this horrible regime, the immigration stances that they're taking, kidnapping our people, murdering our people, all of these things. But then, so beautifully, we could join the picket line about thrivable wages,
Mhm.
livable wages, patient ratios. Like our kids got this great lesson in civic duty doing a two for
Mhm.
one.
That's really cool. It's such a like hopeful picture of like where things are headed politically.
I agree.
Yeah, that's great. I guess, speaking of where things are headed politically, there's a couple of sort of like, I don't know, upcoming political issues. One is that the ballot measure to extend Prop 55 qualified for the ballot this fall. What is the sort of state of that fight, and what is sort of on your radar about it? And also tell us also a little bit about what the impact on public schools has been of Prop 55 and why it's so important.
Well, I mean, if we don't pass, and I think I want to say it's called Prop 3 right
Mhm.
now. So the extending of Prop 55, which is Prop 3 in the manual, if we don't get it, we're going to see thousands of educators losing their positions, losing their jobs. You're going to have thousands of, across California, you're going to have classes closed and so forth, because we like depend on that money, because the legislature doesn't fund us. Federal government doesn't fund us
It's only
the way
getting
that we
worse.
should, and it's only getting worse, right? So we have to have, propositions and ballot measures to bridge the gap.
Mhm.
Right. And so we have to be all out. We have our UTLA leadership conference coming up, where folks are going to be talking about it extensively in the political arena, around making sure that we are on the front lines for Prop 3, and which is the extension of Prop 55, because we desperately need to make sure that we hold on to that funding. We have to pass it, period, full stop. So that is the major piece for us. Is we don't have any school We don't have any school board races. So we finished that. So now our full focus can be on Prop 3 and getting that across the finish line. And I know that within, California, with the California Teachers Association and California Federation of Teachers, like everybody is going to be all out for Prop 3. So
Right.
that is, that's going to be the biggest thing for us that's on the radar. I would say, like, the shifts in funding. I mean, we've always been underfunded. And for us, the amount that California spends on a child is $18,534. And people are like, oh, 18,000, that's a lot. It's not. That is
In this economy?
Yeah, right. In this economy. But to incarcerate a child,
Mm-hmm.
it is $127,827.
Mm-hmm.
And so I submit to you 127,000 to incarcerate. These priorities are upside down
Absolutely.
because we should be talking about education and not incarceration. And that is the end. That's the starting and the ending point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when people are like, oh, we should, if we are funding incarceration rates really high and we are not funding what folks critically need, because to me, and I don't live in utopia. I'm a realist all day, every day. But I'm a realist who is hopeful. I'm a realist who is hopeful because I think about, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker. I think of hope
Yeah.
and radical joy, right? And the struggle. And so when I think about that, I'm like, if we had some legislatures, some politicians that actually believed in public education, that is a fundamental right for every child, right? If we had some folks that actually believe that, then we would see some different shifts.
Yeah.
We really would.
Yeah.
If we had some legislature that believed in having, Medicare for all, forget Medicare for all, say healthcare for all. Like if we just like, what? These are to me, these should be without question the things that we actually need for our babies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Look, private schools, they get money, donors, all of this stuff. There's a school, I can't even think of the name. They have 10 kids in the classroom.
Jeez.
Let me tell you, what you could do with one teacher
And 10 kids.
10 kids in the classroom, all of the things could be achieved.
Well, and imagine how much better the experience of those children would be that they're like, well, here's an adult who actually cares about me. And like, because they don't know, when you're in the classroom as a kid, like you don't know about the funding stuff. You don't know how class sizes are determined.
Unless you have an educator that tells them.
Ding. But also, yeah, exactly. But also it's just like thinking of like the teachers that I had growing up who really made me feel like my ideas were important and like my perspective was important and my experience was important. It's like that made all the difference in engaging me and keeping me in school and keeping me like passionate about learning and really like having another adult who was not my parents, who was like engaged with me as a learner and as a thinker is less like, it is an experience that too few kids get to have. I mean, and every kid should have it. That's right. The community that I want to live in.
Every kid deserves it.
Yes.
It's not should have. They deserve it.
Yes.
We owe them that.
Yes.
Right? Just like we owe them. And I think it's like, how do we get out of where we are? It's going to be critical thinking skill.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's, you mentioned the AI thing at the beginning of our conversation, but like when it comes down to it, I was listening to an episode of the 404 Media podcast last night when I was making dinner. And one of the things that they were talking to people who work in creative industries, and one of the things they were talking to is they were like, look, there is something that each person can do better than a robot and will always be able to do better than a robot. And like, I think this is the place where kids are going to have to figure it out, right? And like they need and deserve the kind of support to figure that thing out, because it's so important to their future and our collective future as like human beings. So.
Right. I mean, like a robot. I mean, look, if you have a robot in your classroom and a kid comes in and is feeling away, right? They had an argument with their boyfriend, their friend, their,
their parents are going through a tough time.
Whoever, the principal jammed them up. They dealt with the police harassing them on the way to school police harassing them in the school. They come to you, they had an argument with their parent or guardian or whatever, or a friend or whatever, or they came to school and they're hungry. And so forth. They just got kicked out of their house for being, gay, lesbian, transgender, whatever. All of that comes into your classroom. Mm-hmm. And a robot is just going to be like, sit down and get this work done.
Yeah.
Because they're on their, it's like a Waymo. They on their program. An educator is going to be like, hold on. Let's do a restorative circle right here, right now. Whatever, look, this little lesson plan is going on the wayside for today, because I got to connect with these babies in a real way to say, I care about you. And now our whole community, the vibe is off. We got to get this positivity spirit, got to bring some hope in. But we got to be dealing with, it's trauma-informed curriculum care, right? It's what we do as educators every single day. Before you can get to the learning, you got to address the root causes. If your kid is coming into the school hungry, somebody I know, an educator around, has a pantry full of food and will let that baby sit down and eat. If you know that kid didn't get any sleep that night because they had to work a shift at McDonald's to pay for their family, that person may have to put their hood up and take a nap. We do that as educators. A robot is not going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that the thing that strikes me about the moment that we're in is that there are a lot of forces that are arrayed against exactly this kind of like, it is both like trauma-informed education, and it is also like we are modeling through the way that we are doing our work how we want society to work, right? And like showing kids that there is another way to be than just like a cog in a machine. And I think that, one of the things that I'm sitting with in our conversation is that we are in a political moment nationally where, the Trump administration wants to actively dismantle the Department of Education, right? What is the sort of like, I guess, like hopeful thread that you see between the organizing, the bargaining, the working in and with community outside of the school to build support for public education? How do we get through this moment of incredible hostility to this really sort of like deeply human vision of what education can and should be? What are the challenges and what is the sort of like strategy that you see taking shape that'll get us there to the other side?
Well, I mean, we have to be in the fight back, fight forward, fight back moment. Like I said, also critical thinking skills. Like educators cannot be silenced around teaching critical thinking skills. We have to teach critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills, that's what they fear. That's what fascists fear, authoritarians fear, is the general public actually knowing that you're doing some dirt over here, that you are up to no good. If I am lulled into this, mind frame that, everything is, yeah, supposed to be like this and it's always going to be like this or whatever, because I have not educated my brain, I have not read some books, I have not, thought about these things like why educators matter, the reason why they want to dismantle the Department of Education, because they wrote about it in Project 2025. And I feel like there were so many people that were like, that's not true. Like they told you. Well, he said that he didn't do it. He's a part of it. He might not have been the smartest person, and he may not have written it, but somebody else, a scholar, did, right? Um, and that's what I feel like in this moment we are going to need the real Democrats to stand up. We're going to need the real folks that are not taking, corporate money and so forth, like the real people that are down with the working class to actually say, no, we are taking this back and educating, right? And it's going to take educator unions to actually continue to stoke the flames of critical thinking skills, politicization, like just the real conversations around what is happening and what is at stake. When you already know that 60% of Project 2025 has already been done, that should scare the hell out of you, because it's like, okay, so what are the next steps? We have to stop believing people on the right and the left, because look, we have to stop believing people that say like, I don't know what's going on, or believing that these folks are going to save us. We're going to save us. We, the people. We, the people, we, the community, we, the students, we, the educators, right? We, the paraprofessionals, we are going to be the ones to save us. And that means that we have to get more sophisticated in our language. We have to get more, we've got to read. We've got to hold trainings. Look, when the immigration piece happened in Los Angeles, we saw just a swarm. But who had been there all along? The community.
Mm-hmm.
The community. Labor got involved because our brother, David Huerta, USWW, SEIU California, like they threw his head onto the concrete. And folks were like, oh my God, that could be me as a labor leader.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And will people come to my rescue? But the community was there. So it was like know your rights trainings, community self-defense, Union del Barrio here, right? Chirla was here. El Rescate was here. Our union was here. Harbor area peace patrols. You had the people, these were educators and community members and students down in San Pedro, blocking Terminal Island, taking videos. That's what I saw our people doing in such a beautiful way. But the community was there all along. And so I want to always give kudos to the community because they were ringing the alarm for many years and we didn't even pay attention. And so now that we've come on the set, I always say, like, giving all, kudos to them. They were on the set. Here we are. So now we can come together in this real way. That's what it's going to be. But I often think in my mind, like, what is our red line? Now, I know that ICE agents come back. I know what our red line, I know what UTLA's red line is. I know what the community's red line. I know what the students' red line, right? Immigration comes. I also am like, so when police brutality shows up, where's that red line? When they try to take away the funding for education, where's that red line? our national unions, labor unions, NEA, AFT, you know, they have some red lines. We have to make sure that every place, every educator knows it and knows, look, even if you voted for that dude in the White House right now, you as an educator or education support professional, your duty of care is to the babies that are in your classroom or on your work site. That's our duty of care because education is a fundamental right. I don't care where you came from. And that fight back, fight forward moment, that's where everybody has to get to. But we also have to get very savvy because the right has been writing these narratives and saying destructive things, the war on drugs, all of that, COINTELPRO, like all of that stuff. They've been working on that ish for years.
Decades,
Centuries.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can trace that red lining all the way back, right? Like all of those things, redlining, not being able to get a loan, the flip flop of the mortgage rates, making sure that you don't have health care. How many Black women mothers lose their lives in pregnancy because of the maternal mortality rate? Those are real. And we need the legislature, well, the legislators that are really about it. We need those folks to step up and call a thing because, we're going to have to protect the election, right? Because there's going to be the, stealing of the election. We know that it's going to happen. So what are we doing in that moment? And when is our red line like South Korea? Like when is the red line where everybody is out in the streets? Like, nah, you call martial law? Okay. Everybody to the streets and let's go. Everybody with their pots and pans, let's go. We did it once in COVID, right? Everybody came out on the streets with their pots and pans and, like, I'm here, we are here. So when are we going to be here? And now is that time. The time is now. Read up, hydrate, do some stretches, get yourself together so that we're not atrophied and we're ready to hit the streets and keep this thing moving. Because we need to make sure that what we leave for students is livable and thrivable.
That's right. Well, Cecily, it has been an absolute I feel like I could talk to you for the rest of the day. Like we could just rap for the rest of the day. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I hope we get to talk again soon. I know that you are staying in the struggle and take good care. Thank you for making the time.
Absolutely. And I look forward. Let's see what else is happening, especially as we're moving on with Prop 3, the extension of Prop 55. I mean, that's going to be super important for our fight forward around educational justice for our babies.
All right. Thanks so much, Cecily. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
My thanks again to Cecily for talking with me today. This show is published by Convergence, a magazine for radical insights. I'm Caden Mock, and our producer is Josh Elstro. Kimmy David designed our cover art, and Trey Nitza is our summer intern. Convergence Magazine is a proud founding member of the Movement Media Alliance. If you liked what you heard, please leave a rating and review of the podcast on your listening platform of choice. Or even better, share this episode with a friend or on social media. This helps us find new listeners, and it really means a lot to us. Recently, Melinda became a member and wrote in to say that she, quote, finds the podcast incredibly insightful in helping my organizing. If you'd like to join her and support the work that we do at Convergence, bringing our movements together to strategize, struggle, and win in this crucial historical moment, you can become a member at convergencemag.com/membership. Even a few bucks a month goes a long way to making sure that our independent small team can continue to build a map for our movements. I hope this helps.